हेलो चालू करूं करो ना Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Today in Unit 9, People, Development and Environment, we are going to study about the natural hazards and disasters. And we are also going to study about mitigation strategies. That is how the world is going to fight against these particular natural hazards. So first of all, let's look into what are natural hazards. So natural hazards are severe and extreme weather and climate events occurring naturally. So the word itself, natural, means it is happening naturally or it is happening in the environment without human interference. It is a severe and extreme weather and climate events. Extreme weather and climate events which happen or which occur naturally. Some regions are more vulnerable to certain hazards. Now we see that in certain places like Bangladesh or in Pakistan, we see that these areas are very prone to heavy rainfall, and because they have a lot of rivers, we see that the floods are always raging over there. So some regions are more vulnerable to certain kinds of hazards. Natural hazards become natural disasters when lives and livelihoods are destroyed. So there's a very thin line which divides between natural hazards and natural disasters. So when natural hazards become natural disasters, when do they become natural disasters? When people lose their lives, when people lose their sources of income, when they lose their homes and their agricultural lands, when they lose their livelihood, then we call it as a natural disaster. Natural hazards and disaster are almost interrelated with each other, and that is why it is difficult to know the difference between the two. So it is very difficult to distinguish between natural hazards and natural disasters. Both almost mean the same thing. Natural hazard events are grouped into two categories. The first one is geophysical hazards and the second one is biological hazards. So let's look into what is the meaning of geophysical hazards. Now, geophysical hazards, they are geological and meteorological phenomena such as earthquakes, coastal erosion, volcanic eruption, cyclonic storms, and droughts. Whereas biological hazards, they refer to diverse array of diseases and infestations. Example, floods, wildfires can result from a combination of geological, hydrological, and climatic factors. So geophysical hazards are the ones which they are basically geological and meteorological kinds. They are the things that fall into this category are the earthquakes, coastal erosion, volcanic eruptions, cyclonic storms, and droughts, or what we call as famines. Biological hazards, they refer to diverse array of disease and infestations. So when naturally there are diseases which are spreading, infestations that are spreading, then we call it as a biological hazards. Like when the floods are there, wildfires are there, they can be a combination of geological, hydrological, and climate factors. Then geological hazards. What are the different kinds of geological hazards? Avalanches. What are avalanches? Large snow or rock mass sliding down a mountainside. So avalanches are very, very dangerous. We see that sometimes, especially these avalanches happen in snowbound areas, especially the Siachen Glacier and other snowbound areas of the world. These are huge chunks of snow or even the rock which is just sliding down the mountainside, and they destroy a lot of. They sometimes they fall on villages, they roll over on villages, and they really destroy the roads and the traffic as well as the villages which are close by. And then we see earthquakes. Earthquakes we all are very familiar with. The recent earthquake which took place in Turkey and Syria has claimed thousands of lives. So we all know what is the meaning of earthquakes and why earthquakes are caused. So earthquake is also coming under geological hazards. Then tsunamis. What are tsunamis? We all have seen on TV at least as to how the huge tidal waves of the sea, they come and wipe away all the coastal lands. Seismic sea wave or tidal waves. So these are basically seismic sea waves or tidal waves, huge tidal waves. Sometimes a huge earthquakes happens in the within the sea, and because of which huge amount of waves and huge amount of water is displaced, which results into a huge tsunami. Then coastal erosion, physical processes caused due to cyclones and storms. So whenever there are cyclones, whenever there are storms, we see that these are the physical processes, and we see that coastal erosion of land, erosion of the coastal belt happens. Then lahar, closely related to volcanic eruptions originating from eruptions of glaciatic volcano, including mud, melted ice, rock. So lahar is a very unique process in which there are volcanic eruptions. These are a kind of volcanoes which happen in the ice or in the glaciers. So when these things erupt, it includes mud, melted ice, and rocks. Then landslides, we all also know what is landslide. Full villages are destroyed sometimes because of these landslides. A huge piece of a mountain starts falling. Then we have got the sinkholes, and we have got the volcanic eruptions. What do you mean by sinkholes? Sinkholes are when there is a cavity within the Earth's crust that is formed in the surface. It just becomes like a huge hole, and buildings and villages and cities are just swallowed up in this sinkholes. And volcanic eruptions, you all are aware of. These are all the geological hazards that happen naturally. Then we move on to meteorological hazards. These are the blizzards. What are blizzards? These are winter ice storms. This basically happens in high altitude areas or in snowbound areas. The blizzard is like a storm, and it carries particles of snow and ice. So it lowers down the temperature of that region. It is a very very dangerous thing to be caught in a blizzard. People who work in Siachen Glacier, our Indian soldiers, they all know very well what is a blizzard, and so many soldiers of Indian Army have died because of this kind of blizzard. So blizzards are like they also displace ice. Tents are buried under ice. People are buried under the ice. Equipment is buried under the ice. And then drought, you all know, drought is nothing but famines. We know there are two kinds of famines, wet famine and dry famine. When there is a huge amount of rain, more amount of rain than usual, it destroys all the crop, which also leads to famine or drought. Or when there is no rainfall or very less rainfall, we see that famines do occur. People do not have anything to eat nor to drink. Then we move on to hailstorms. Hailstorms are also very destructive in nature. Meteorology. These also fall under meteorological hazards. Mostly we have seen the hail, which is very small, as big as maybe as big as a groundnut. But in certain cases, these hailstorms are huge. They are like apples, and they are like oranges, as huge as them, and they cause a lot of destruction, especially the sheep and the goats and all the animals which are in the open farmland. They are totally destroyed because of this hailstorm. Then heat waves. We all are aware of the heat wave. Heat waves are a kind of wave that is caused because of extensive heat, and this or what we call it as a loo, it just moves from one place to the other. It is like a breeze, a hot breeze or hot air flowing through, which also kills a lot of people. Then cyclonic storm. We all know what is cyclones. Cyclones are so very destructive. Recently in New Zealand, there was some cyclone which is about to approach on Sunday. So cyclones are also very destructive. These are also meteorological hazards. Then we have ice storms, tornadoes. The tornadoes, people in India are not very familiar with tornadoes, but you must have seen it on the TV or on the history channel or other channels, how tornadoes are caused. It is just like a huge cyclone, and it moves and it destroys so many things which comes in its ways. Then there is something called as geomagnetic storm. Then water spouts. Water spouts are basically found in lakes and in rivers. The water moves like a whirlwind. These are also destructive in nature. Then we have floods. When there is excessive rain, the rivers get flooded, and the floods also kills so many different people, so much amount of people. Then we have got wildfires. Wildfires are also very dangerous. At times when it is very hot during the summer times, the forest on their own they catch fire, and these wildfires are very destructive. If you ever have been to the coal mines, somewhere where the coal mines are there, in Chhattisgarh or in Maharashtra, also near Nagpur, Chandrapur especially, during the time of summer, that the summer temperatures sometimes they rise more than 45 degrees Celsius, and because of the heat, the coal catches fire. So wildfires is also termed under meteorological hazards. What is the difference between natural hazard and natural disaster? As we have seen, natural hazard and natural disaster, there is a very less or a very thin line or a very small difference amongst it. But let's go through it. Natural hazard is a threat or risk that takes place in nature, like earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and landslides, which happen naturally and has a negative effect on people or on the environment. So these are naturally happening things, like things in the nature, like earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, landslides, which affect the people, which have a negative effect on the people as well as the surrounding environment. The natural disaster is an unfavorable event caused from natural processes of the earth, like floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunamis, and other geologic processes. The natural hazards can be classified into geophysical earthquake, landslide, tsunami, volcano eruptions, hydrological avalanches and floods, climatological extreme temperatures, drought and wildfires, climatological extreme temperatures, drought and wildfires, meteorological cyclones, storms, or biological, which include disease and epidemics. Whereas natural disasters are the effect of natural hazards on humanity. So what is we all know that anything that happens in nature which is destructive, we call it as natural hazards. So, and what is natural disasters? These are the effects which natural hazards they cause on humanity. Example: the tsunami in Indonesia caused a great loss of property and lives. In the Indian scenario, the subcontinent is highly exposed to cyclones, droughts, earthquakes, floods, avalanches, forest fire, and landslides. The government has taken proper measures for prevention and mitigation of the affected areas of disasters, frequently in the Himalayan region of northern India. Data shows us among the 35 states, union territories in the country, 25 places are disaster prone. So out of the 35 states and of India, we see that 25 places are disaster prone. Approximately 50 million people in our country are affected by one or the other disaster every year, including loss of property. So we see the Indian subcontinent because it is facing the sea, because it is we have got such a huge sea coast. Then naturally we have a lot of cyclones because of the sea coast. Then there are earthquakes also. Then we have got cyclones, droughts, floods, avalanches, forest fire, and landslides. So the Indian government has to really take care, or has to really be very, very careful of all these things to protect the people. The 1770 Great Bengal Famine. The Great Bengal Famine was a large famine in Bengal during the British rule in the period of 1769 to 1773. Bengal famine has caused the deaths of 10 million people in Bengal, Bihar, and some parts of Orissa. So here we see talking about the natural hazards and the natural disasters that happened in India. In 1770, there was this great Bengal famine which killed 10 million people in Bengal, Bihar, and in Orissa. So this happened within the span of 4 years, 1769 to 1773. Then we see the 1839 Koringa cyclone. The Koringa cyclone was one of the 10 big disasters that shook India. Struck at a tiny village of Godavari district in Andhra Pradesh. The Great Koringa cyclone killed around 20,000 people in the ancient city of Koringa. So Koringa is a small village in Andhra Pradesh. So there was a huge cyclone in 1839 which killed 20,000 people in this particular village. Then 1894 third plague pandemic. The major plague pandemic came to British India in 1896, killing more than 12 million people in India and China alone. So in 1896, there was a huge plague that came to India when the Britishers were ruling India, and it killed 12 million people in India as well as in China. Third plague pandemic was initially seen in port cities such as Bombay and Kolkata, then spread to small towns and rural areas of many regions of India. So this was also called this was also a plague which destroyed so many people. it did not originate in India. It came from outside India, and the main reason why the port cities of Bombay and Calcutta were affected by this pandemic was because the infected people came through the sea to these particular port cities, and then from these areas, cities of Bombay and Kolkata, it spread into the smaller towns and into the rural areas of India. Then 1979 Lahaul Valley avalanche. Lahaul Spiti Valley receives heavy snowfall during the winter season, and it causes avalanches. The Lahaul Valley disaster in March of 1979 buried 200 people under 20 feet of snow. The only avalanche in the Himalayas and one of the 10 deadliest avalanches in history of the world. So Laul Valley, because it receives huge snowfall during the winter, it caused an avalanche, and in 1979, 200 people were buried or they were covered by ice, or what we call as an avalanche. So this was one of the deadliest avalanche of the world. Then 1998 Malpa landslide. Heavy rainfall caused Malpa landslide was one of the worst landslides in India. At village Malpa in Pithogarh of Uttarakhand, around 380 people were killed when massive landslides washed the entire village along with Hindu pilgrims of Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. So in 1998 also there was this Malpa landslide because of which 380 people lost their lives. It was a huge and a massive landslide which washed away the entire village along with the pilgrims who had gone to Kailash Mansarovar. Then 1999's Orissa cyclone. In 1999, Odisha cyclone, also known as Super Cyclone 05B, was the most deadliest tropical cyclone in the Indian Ocean and most destructive Indian storm since 1971. It caused almost deaths of 15,000 people and made heavy to extreme damages. So in the state of Odisha, we see that this cyclone came in 1999. It was one of the deadliest and the most powerful cyclone, and it was a very destructive cyclone, and it killed almost more than 15,000 people and caused a lot of damage to life and property. Then 2001 Gujarat earthquake. The massive earthquake occurred on India's 51st Republic Day on January 26, 2001 at Bachau Taluka of Kutch district of Gujarat. Gujarat earthquake had a magnitude of between 7.6 and 7.7 and killed around 20,000 people. So in 2001, there was a huge and a massive earthquake which happened in Gujarat, in the Bachau Taluka of Kutch district of Gujarat. And we can imagine the amount of destruction that this particular earthquake caused, because it was of the magnitude of 7.6 to 7.7 and it killed around 20,000 people. The recent the recent earthquake which happened in Turkey and Syria, it had a magnitude of 7.8, and on TV you must have seen how deadly this earthquake was and how many lives it has taken. Then 2002 Indian heat wave. India's heat wave in 2002 at South region killed more than 1,000 people. Most of the deaths occurred in state of Andhra Pradesh. The heat was so intense that birds fell from the sky, ponds and rivers dried up. So in 2002 there was a huge heat wave that happened in the south, and especially in Andhra Pradesh. 1,000 people died. The heat was so intense, the flow of the heat was, the wave of the heat was so intense that even the birds died in the skies. Ponds and rivers were dried up because of this great heat wave. So you can imagine how much damage this must have caused, or what could be the temperature of this particular heat wave. Then 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. The Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami occurred in 2004 at the west coast of Sumatra, killing over 230,000 people in 14 countries. So this huge tsunami that happened in the Indian Ocean in 2004, it occurred in the Indian Ocean, and the surrounding coastal countries, they were affected by it. 14 countries were very badly affected, and it killed 230,000 people in 2004. Indian Ocean tsunami was one of the deadliest natural disasters in history of India. So we all know, or we all have witnessed in this 2004 how this Indian Ocean tsunami took place and how it killed so many people. It was one of the deadliest disasters that we have seen in the history of India. Then we got the 2007 Bihar flood. The 2007-2008 Bihar flood are listed as the worst hit flood in the living memory of Bihar in last 30 years. Bihar is India's most flood-prone state. A recurring disaster appears on an annual basis and destroys thousands of human lives, apart from livestock and assets worth millions. In 2007 and 2008, in this particular year, we see that there was a huge flood in Bihar, and Bihar was very badly hit by this particular flood, and we see that so many people died, and there was so much of damage and destruction to the life and property. And in Bihar, such happenings or floods are very, very common because of its because of a geopolitical location, because of its geographical location, and it is called as India's most flood-prone state. Usually we see that in every monsoon season, Bihar always gets flooded, and there is so much of destruction of life and property. Then we have got the 2005 Mumbai catastrophes. In 2005, Maharashtra floods was occurred just 1 month after the June of 2005 Gujarat floods. Mumbai, the capital city, was most badly affected and witnessed one of its worst catastrophes in the history of India, killing at least 5,000 people. So we see that in 2005 there was heavy rainfall in Maharashtra, and especially in Mumbai we see that thousands of people, 5,000 people lost their lives because of this particular floods. We see in Mumbai, basically whenever there is heavy rainfall, there is also high tides that happen in the sea, and all this water, the sewage water is not able to, or the rain water is not able to go into the sea, or cannot be drained into the sea because of the high tide. So the water from the sea also backlashes upon Mumbai during high tides and when there is heavy rainfall. So in this 2005 Mumbai catastrophe, we see that 5,000 people lost their lives. So these are all natural disasters and natural hazards. 2010 Eastern Indian storm. The Eastern Indian storm was a severe storm which struck parts of eastern Indian states spanning for 30 to 40 minutes. At least 91 people died in Indian states, and over 91,000 houses were destroyed and partially damaged. So in 2010, we see that this particular storm, Eastern India storm, it hit the eastern Indian states, and it only lasted for 30 to 40 minutes, but it created massive destruction. It destroyed the houses of people. It killed so many people, and so many trees were uprooted. Then 2013 Maharashtra drought. Maharashtra state was affected by the region's worst drought in 40 years. Worst hit areas are Jalna, Jalgaon, and Dhulia are also affected by the famine. Millions of people in Maharashtra are at serious risk of hunger after 2 years of low rainfall in the region. So, regions of Maharashtra, especially the Marathwada region and the Vidarbha region, it receives very less rainfall. But in 2013, this particular region, the areas of Jalna, Jalgaon, and Dhule were affected by the famine in a very bad way. Millions of people were not having food to eat. They were at the serious risk of hunger, and even after 2 years till 2015 also, the rainfall was quite low over here. 2013 Uttarakhand flash floods. On June 2013, Uttarakhand received heavy rainfall, massive landslides due to large flash floods. It suffered maximum damage of houses and structures, killing more than 1,000 people. Sources claim that death toll could be up to 5,000 people. So in Uttarakhand also there were flash floods. What is a flash flood? It is like a cloud burst, which happens because heavy rain just falls in one particular place, and we see that because of which huge landslides happened. Then there are flash floods which happen, and it destroys everything that comes in its way. And we see that in Uttarakhand there was maximum damage to the houses and to the different structures. It killed more than 1,000 people, but sources say that it would have been more than 5,000 people. Then we move on to this mitigation strategies. We have just seen as to what is the meaning of natural hazards. We have seen what are natural hazards, what are natural disasters. So we are going to look into the mitigation strategies. Mitigation means actions taken to prevent or eliminate the natural disasters or hazards like flooding, earthquake, landslides, wildfires, or dam failure to happen. Risk of life, property, social and economic activities are also part of it. So mitigation is what? Mitigation means the action that is taken to stop this, or the action that is taken to stop the natural disasters, or to eliminate the natural disasters, or what we call as prevent the natural disasters and hazards from happening. Like the floods, earthquake, landslides. Risk of life, property, social and economic activities are also part of it. So the government basically takes certain steps. Like if you know that this particular area is prone to floods, then the government will make certain policies by which it will try to divert the water of the flood in a different direction, so that there is no loss of life and property. We see that whenever natural disasters, whenever natural hazards they happen, not only does it kill so many people, but we also see that the economic activities of that particular place are totally hindered, or totally come to a stop, because the roads and the railways are damaged, because the bridges are broken, because of these particular natural disasters. And it takes long time to, or years sometimes, to build these infrastructure once again. So naturally the economic activities or the economy of that particular place, it gets affected to a greater extent. Then what are the different kinds of strategies or the plannings which the government undertakes, or which should be undertaken? Then there are strategies like awareness. Okay, why do landslides happen? It is because there are no trees to hold on. There are no trees, and because of which there are no roots of the trees to hold on to the soil, and because of which the soil becomes very slippery. The soil becomes very loose because there are no roots to hold this particular piece of land. So what is the general awareness that the government and the local population or NGOs they make over there is that they make people aware. They will tell the people about preserving forest, not cutting down forest randomly. So they create awareness among the people. Then they also give certain kind of education as to education to prevent such natural disasters, and at the same time, if there is a flood or if there's an earthquake, if there is a wildfire, then what should the people do to protect themselves and to save themselves and their families or their neighborhood? So this is the kind of education which the government also imparts to the people through non-government organization and through government organization as well. Then preparedness. Preparedness is something which is very important. Like we know that there are certain places which always get floods, which always gets flooded. Like take for example in Mumbai, whenever there are high tides and whenever it rains heavily, then we see that it is bound for the then floods. It is very much natural for floods to come. So to be prepared for this particular kind of natural calamity or natural disaster, the government has to take some action by which it will be able to move the people from that particular place. Or take for example, if it rains heavily in a particular place, then there has to be some arrangement before letting out the water from the dam to empty the villages or to evacuate the people from the villages and take them to a safer location. Then prediction. Prediction is also something which is very important. Meteorological departments, they usually predict the weather. Usually through the satellite pictures, they will come to know what is happening, whether a cyclone is approaching or whether it's going to rain very heavily or whether it is going to be extremely cold. So they warn the people, the local authorities are warned, and because of which these disasters or these natural hazards, they do not cause a lot of destruction because people already came to know that such and such thing was going to come. Then warning systems. There are sometimes there are warnings which the government gives, or there are certain instruments which give the warning whether the earthquake is going to happen, or what kind, or the magnitude of earthquake, or the amount of rainfall that is going to happen. Then these are the warning systems. Then adoption of zoning. This is also a very important mitigation strategy. Then we move on to land use practices. Building codes are required. Land use practices, building codes are very important. Like take for example, most of the floods which happen in the cities, or most of the destruction that is caused during the rains, during the rainy season in the cities, is basically because people have built their houses in the natural canals and in the natural or in the places where water is to flow naturally. So because there is an obstruction for water to flow because of these houses and buildings that are built, we see that the water gets clogged, and because of which the floods are more rampant. So land use practices, how to use the land properly, where buildings have to be constructed. The government has to do an analysis of the ground and of the terrain where these buildings and where these towns are being built. To avoid development on landslide and flood prone areas through planning can somehow reduce the disrupting impacts of natural disasters. So to avoid development on landslide, so areas where landslides can happen, or in areas where floods are bound to come. Okay, so there has to be some kind of planning, and if the cities and towns are planned in a proper way, then we see that the amount of destruction and the hazard that would be caused would be minimum. Like even today, even nowadays in Uttarakhand, we are reading about it in the newspapers as to how the land is going down and down, how the buildings are getting cracked. So this would not have happened if proper town planning would have been there. Then mitigation strategies. Uh, actions taken to prevent or eliminate the natural disasters or hazards like flooding, earthquake, landslides, wildfires, or dams. Failure to happen. Risk of life, property, social and economic activities are also part of it. What are the different strategies? This we have already gone through. Then we move on to land use practices. Also we have seen. The National Disaster Management System in India. We see that India is very prone to natural disaster, so we need a national disaster management in India. This particular NDMS has taken proper measures for prevention and mitigation of the after effects of disasters. Long-term measures have been taken up, but it also requires proper mechanism wherein there is a preset assignment of roles and functions to various institutions at central, state, and district levels. So we see in a country like India where it rains very heavily during the monsoon regions, where there is a network of rivers and streams, floods are very prone to happen. So and also the Himalayan region, because the rocks are not very strong, there are many landslides which happen in that particular places. India is also prone to earthquakes and also to cyclones and hurricanes and tsunamis, because we have got such a huge coastline. So naturally the government of India has to take proper measures, has to do proper planning, not only at the central level but also at the state level and the district level, and coming down to the village level also. So this is very important, that there is a proper chain of command as far as national disaster management in India is concerned. Then what are the institutional mechanisms? The Constitution of National Emergency Management Authority with appropriate legal, financial and administrative powers. So the first institutional mechanism that we have in India is the Constitution of National Emergency Management Authority with appropriate legal, financial and administrative powers. Then roles and responsibilities of NEMA, that is coordinating multi-hazard mitigation, prevention, preparedness and response programs. So here, what are the roles and responsibilities of this organization, NEMA, that is National Emergency Management and Authority? It coordinates multi-hazard mitigation strategies, or it plans, it also tries to prevent, and it is always prepared and for response programs. Policies for disaster risk reduction and mitigation. So they also plan long-term and short-term policies for disaster risk reduction. How we can reduce the risk of the natural hazards and the natural disasters that are going to come. Then preparedness at all levels. So the government has to be prepared at all levels. It also has to have proper proper manpower, like the paramilitary forces, to help the people during the time of natural disasters. So preparedness at all levels is something which is very important. Then coordination of response, there has to be coordination between the different institutions, right from the center to coming down to the villages. Coordination of post-disaster relief and rehabilitation. Then coordination of post-disaster relief. So there has to be coordination of the various institutions after the disaster has happened. So once the disaster takes place, we also have to do something called as disaster management. So there has to be coordination between the different institutions of the government, right from the center to the state and going down to the villages. There has to be kind of coordination to see that the disaster relief and rehabilitation of people happens. Usually when the disaster strikes the people or strikes a particular region, like take for example if there is a flood, then what are the disaster relief management that the government underruns is that the government has to airdrop sometimes through helicopters food packages. They have to rescue the people who are caught in the floods. They have to empty a particular place or vacate a particular region when when the floods are going to take place, and they have to rehabilitate the people. They have to take the people to a different location and protect them. Then amendment of existing laws, procedures, and instructions. Then even the existing laws have to be amended in case when a natural hazard takes place. Then the Department of Relief and Rehabilitation to be redesignated as Department of Disaster Management with enhanced areas of responsibility to include mitigation, prevention, and preparedness. So what are the three important responsibilities that disaster management has? They include mitigation. They have prevention strategies. Then they are also prepared to meet any kind of threat that happens during the time of any kind of disaster. So mitigation, prevention, and preparedness. State Disaster Management Authority to be headed by the Chief Minister. So according to, we have the State Disaster Management Authority is always headed by the Chief Minister of that particular state. The authority to lay down policies and monitor mitigation, prevention and preparedness, as also oversee response. So then there has to be authority to lay down the different policies and to monitor the mitigation, prevention, and preparedness, as also to oversee the response. Then we have the roles of the administrative response to the natural calamity are mainly concerned for the state government. Through the central government, though the central government gives assistance on the relief work, but their responses are determined with the existing policy of finance and relief expenditure. Now we see if there is a natural calamity that happens in a particular state, it is more of the concern of the state government than the central government. Of course, the central government gives assistance, it helps in the relief work, it sanctions money for through the Prime Minister's fund to the people, and help is given by the central government. But basically the natural calamities are they are the concern of the state government. They also have to keep in mind the factors like the importance of natural calamity, the level of relief operation required, the requirement of the central for expanding the financial resources from the state government. So the state governments also have play an important role during the natural calamities. They are the ones who provide relief operation. then they also give a budget to the government and ask money from the central government to allocate money to them so that they will be able to fight this natural disaster. The Division of Disaster Management of Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, is a ministry for all matters that the center except the drought. The Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India, looks after the drought management. The National Contingency Action Plan, NCAP, makes possible in relief and rescue operation without delay. Then the Division of Disaster Management of Ministry of Home Affairs. So the Home Affairs is directly responsible, or through the Home Affairs, the disaster management works in different states, except for drought. The Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India, looks after the drought management. The National Contingency Action Plan makes possible in relief and rescue operation without delay. Then there is also National Contingency Fund, through which states and different areas or union territories are helped by the central government as far as money is required. Non-government organizations, NGOs, play an important role as communication link between the disaster management agencies and the affected community. So the non-government organizations, they also play a very, very important role as far as it is basically a communication link between the disaster management agencies and the people who are affected. Many NGOs are helping in preparedness, relief and rescue, rehabilitation and reconstruction, and also in monitoring and feedback. So what is the role of non-government organization during the time of natural disasters? They help in preparedness for relief and rescue. They rescue the people, they provide relief to the people, they even rehabilitate the people, they also do the reconstruction work and also give the feedback to the government. The new strategy for safer future. Preparedness, mitigation and prevention. When there is a disaster, a quick rescue and relief mission is expected. The damage can be minimized if proper preparedness levels are achieved. Now, whenever natural disasters, they strike a particular place, how the government responds or how the people responds in that particular place is something which is very important. Quick rescue, quick relief missions, if they work immediately round the clock, then we see that they will be able to save many people. Like take for example, if an earthquake strikes a particular place, and and there are so many people who are stuck in buildings, who are stuck under the debris, and if there is no rescue and relief operations going on there, or very little is there, then what will happen? The people who are stuck in these under the debris or under the buildings, they are prone to die after some time. But immediately, if the rescue teams run over there, if the paramilitary forces rush over there, and the machinery is sent over there to remove the debris and to help the people come out from there, then the damage that would be caused would be very, very small compared to what would have happened if there was no proper disaster management or no proper rescue or relief operations done. The damage can be minimized if proper preparedness levels are achieved. Preparedness measures like community development of advanced forecasting systems, effective communications, and sound and well-networked institutional structures, which involves the government organization, academic and research institution, the armed forces, and the non-governmental organizations. We see that in India, we see the paramilitary forces and the army, navy, and the air force. They are put to job. They are sent by the government to help rescue the people. They are sent for rescue missions. They are sent for relief missions, and they are able to save so many lives because they are properly trained to rescue the people. Then we have got National Disaster Management Act 2005. The Parliament of India has passed the National Disaster Management Act in November 2005, which brings a pattern of India's approach to disaster management. So this particular act has been passed by the Parliament of India, which is called as the National Disaster Management Act of 2005. And what is the main importance of this? It gives us the pattern in India's approach as to how our country is going to fight against the disaster, or how our country is going to deal with the disaster management, how they're going to provide relief and rescue operation to the people, because our country is very, very prone to natural disasters and to natural hazards. So this is all that we have in this particular class. We have completed natural hazards and disasters and the different mitigation strategies that are given by the Government of India. So we got only one more lesson to complete, and with that we will wind up with Unit 9, People, Development and Environment. If you like this video, you can share it, you can give it a like, or you can even subscribe it. Thank you so much and have a great day.